Hi, I've not done these Forgotten Treasure videos in a while and it's about time, so I've picked up a few cool games for today. A role-playing strategy mixture that's all about tactical battles, a simulation like no other giving you a glimpse at the world from a completely different perspective, a 3D action platformer with a literal twist, an 8-bit side-view exploration platforming classic, and finally, a modern indie shooter in vein of Control Metal Slug, but dare I say it, much better. So let's check them all out. You know what's the most boring way to start anything? A toast, book, review or a story even? A definition. So, Vandal is a person who intentionally damages public or private property. Vandal Heart, however, is a person who toys with your feelings and emotions just to discard you like a used rug when they're done. But Vandal Hearts, plural, is a fantastic turn-based tactical RPG and a strategy mixture. The background to the game is one you've seen a dozen times before, and one that's actually happening all around the world this very day. So the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, so the transition of wealth is very unidirectional, and people in general are dissatisfied with how things are, don't have much hopes for the future and are increasingly more and more restless. All that, along with corrupt government and lack of social securities, lead to a bloody and unfortunately fatal in consequences revolution. The tyrannical leaders have been overthrown and a new government was chosen. Sadly, it failed to succeed in leading the country out of devastating recession. A heroic leader of the revolution, and one that people hoped would lead them to better times, mysteriously disappeared, and those who took charge instead seem to be as greedy, corrupt and rotten as the people they've replaced. You know, I have my theories on how to fix the world and how not only to keep the governments in check, but also keep them actively wanting to do good for the population, but it's not a political channel, so I just want you to know that there are ways, and it can be better. If only people would be willing to accept uncomfortable for current world's politicians changes. Anyway, you play as Ash Lumber, an employee of Ishtarian security forces who's been sent to investigate a disappearance of a fellow high-ranking soldier, Magnus. So, with his two team members, childhood friend Diego and a priest Clint, while working on the case, Ash accidentally stumbles upon a huge conspiracy involving an evil religious organization known as the Cult of Nirvav. It appears that they're manipulating the events on an international scale to usurp and hold the power over the country. On a side note, and it's probably worth keeping close to heart, any organization with cult in its name should be something to steer away from. The deeper Dash goes into the rabbit hole and the more he learns, the more he is convinced that the things have to change to bring back peace, honesty and just law to the Ishtaria. So, being the idealistic and hopeful young man, he decides to do just that, gather up allies and save the day. Together they will stand up for what's right despite the overwhelming odds stacked against them and face more dangerous foes than they could have ever expected to fight against. Pretty fun, even if rather generic story, right? It is also seriously disturbing if you compare the game's setting to our current geopolitical situation. But whatever, it is what it is. Both story and combat take place on an isometric viewpoint maps, and the balance between them definitely favors combat encounters. So yeah, you'll involve yourself in a lot of fighting, and your party of 3 will eventually grow to even up to 12 individual unique characters, each with their own background, story, needs, wants, classes and skills. Battles are turn-based, very strategic and remind me a lot of Final Fantasy Tactics. Each of the characters represent one of 7 available classes of Swordsman, Armor, Archer, Hawk Knight, Monk, Mage or Cleric, and they all have access to unique skills and abilities. They play off each other on a very well-known today from mobile games sword paper scissors basis, with each of them being strong against particular ones and weak against others. It's a simple but very effective way of keeping the game balanced and for the most part works in Vandal Hearts quite well. Despite its incredibly linear story and predictable JRPG tropes, combat sequences in Vandal Hearts are very deep, engaging and most importantly hella fun, which makes it a treat for any and all tactical nuts, and especially those who appreciate character progression and figuring out of best combos and characters' use case scenarios for any and all challenges ahead. Oh man, I just heard what I said. Tactical nuts. So, nuts painted in camouflage colors and loosely hanging in any and all combat encounters, providing a secondary and competitive to your head target for your enemies to aim at. What I really mean here is that all other nuts can go bananas over this sweet pie of a game too, just saying that the tactics lovers will feel in Vandal Hearts right at home. SimAnt is one of the most unusual life simulations to come out from under the Maxis' wing in the early 1990s. As the title suggests, you play as an ant. Well, more precisely, you simulate an ant colony and get to control ants too, switching between them at your whim. And it's as addicting of a game as unexpected the subject of it is too. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm sure that I've stepped on hundreds if not thousands of ants during my life unknowingly, I've unintentionally crushed them with stuff I've dropped on the ground and I've swatted them off my foot. I've basically found them to be invisible in my day-to-day life unless I've actively looked for them or their end pits, which wasn't that often either, if ever. I could probably count the number of times I've even thought about them on one hand. I could if said hand wasn't busy holding a magnifying glass and going to town on what seems like a small town worth of these small insects, leaving countless scorched and twisted burnt stick-like carcasses behind. Wow, that got dark fast. And it's also not true, I feel it's important to note here, given the times that we live in now. Anyway, you control a black ant colony, which built from ground up, so to speak, starting with single queen and producing offspring spread between the soldiers, workers and breeders. Soldier ants are naturally your army, your forces to defend your colony, to fight the opposing red ants and to protect your workers. They're the first and also the last line of defense, and when you learn the game, its tropes and all the best strategies, also your invasion forces that will help you conquer the entire yard and a house too, taking it over from humans. Workers are generally the most important part of your colony as they keep it prospering, growing and most importantly alive. They not only dig tunnels and caves expanding on your anthill, but also find and collect food for all your ants to not die out of starvation. And when all armies fail, workers can be used as weak defending forces just to give yourself a time to build back up. Breeders are used to, well, breed. I mean, you use them to start new colonies, so while not in use all the time, like the two other are, when they are needed, no other ants can take their place. You grow them to send them off to other sectors on the map. And when they get there and manage to establish an anthill, which is a big word for a hole in the ground with a lone queen in it, you can move to that sector and try to capture it and further your campaign. The overall idea here is quite simple. To take over the entire yard, split into numerous sectors, to drive off the more aggressive and expansionist red ants, and to get rid of the humans, forcing them to abandon their infested house. But as in most cases when things are easy to explain, they're actually much more difficult to achieve than it sounds. For one, the world of SimAnt is a surprisingly dangerous one. Not only the yard is filled with huge spiders and caterpillars, but there are also humans, cats and dogs, rain that's easy to drown in, and even a lawnmower that has a tendency to annihilate your ants with surprising accuracy. The red ants are no slouches either, and they want the same slice of the same pie too, so each sector of the yard or house you'll try to overtake, they're gonna be there, actively getting in your way, laser focused on finding and killing your queen. And she's not gonna defend herself well, especially when she's all about spitting out the offspring at the machine gun pace, like a clone factory. When leading your soldiers to battle, you have a few commands you can issue to your ants. So attack, defend, scout and likes, and it's with use of this ant smart strategy, or well, you know, overwhelmingly large forces, as that will work too, that the battles for the neighborhood are won. It could be argued that SimAnt is very repeatable, that each and every sector is basically the same, short of the dangers that you meet there and the presentation, but by that logic, most strategies are too, so that argument is a bit moot. The point is that if you ever wondered how it is to be an ant running away from the scorching sun ray overcharged by the instrument of death known as the magnifying glass, or how 20-on-1 ants vs spider battle looks like, now's your chance to do that. And to raise your colony to the greatness too. Let's not forget that part. Chameleon Twist is one of those weird N64 exclusives that never received ports to other systems or even remakes, effectively remaining a sleeper hit and a little treasure to be discovered among vast and awesome games-filled library of N64. I mean, imagine this. It's a Friday afternoon, the school's out and you've saved up enough money to get yourself a brand new game to play for the entire weekend. So, you enter your local game shop like a boss, kicking the doors in and scouting all the shelves for the best find. You only have enough cash for one game though, so it's gotta be an amazing one. And as you go through stacks of similarly looking cards, you find a weird sounding and unimpressive looking Chameleon Twist next to shiny, red, blue and yellow, super cool Superman 64, sitting there on the shelf waiting to be experienced. That's why Chameleon Twist is little known, and that's also why Superman 64 is regarded as one of the worst games ever made, because it promised a lot and delivered only disappointments, regrets and an aftertaste of anger. Don't quote me on that, don't fact check that, and let's just carry on. Chameleon Twist is a 3D action platformer that was made to target a younger audience. Does it mean it's not the game for you and an instant skip? I don't think so. The fact that it's a bit easier than your typical games in the genre may actually be its saving grace and one of its most important upsides. Because while some would argue that Mario 64's controls were perfect, if you think about it, like give it a minute and compare it to how similar games control today, rather than let your emotions take the wheel, it will be more than obvious that the early implementation of 3D controls, and especially the camera work in the late 90s, left a lot to be desired. So, having the game that is fast, fun and action-packed and in the same time does not require you to repeat the same sections to progress was a breath of fresh air. You play as one of these 4 differently colored characters who don't look like chameleons at all. It's explained in the story, but we'll touch that in a few minutes. Just keep in mind that looks can be deceiving, as the most important, other than the camouflage physical trait of chameleon, is kept and is its most important gameplay mechanic, namely the super long and extra sticky tongues, which are used for everything. For traversal, to vault yourself up, to swing around on, or to pull yourself to conveniently placed posts. Also for picking up of items and interaction with objects and even combat, to either gobble up the enemies or hurl them at the others. The possibilities are definitely not endless, but the idea is pretty fun and makes Chameleon Twist feel unique and not just another Mario 64 clone. There are 6 centered around different gameplay mechanics worlds in the game, each with their own team no less, tons upon tons of enemies to beat and crowns and hearts to collect. And while 6 is not a big number however you wanna look at it, having fewer stages than in other titles in a genre guaranteed that they did not lack in variety and the game felt fun and lighthearted all throughout. All stages and with a boss fight too. And these, while fun and interestingly made, are not overly difficult and will take you a minute at most to figure out. The enemies are hella cute and don't look at all like something that could cause you any trouble. Well, unless you're lactose or gluten intolerant, as some of them are anthropomorphic ice cream sandwiches and cookies. But then again, even if you can't digest them, you can just pop a pill and taunt the monstrosities by playing the game while eating their brethren in real life. You know, to show them who's the game and who's the gamer or whatever. Even if I stand by my earlier statement that Chameleon Twist being made with younger audiences in mind and on an easier side than the other contemporary platformers, it can still prove to be quite demanding at times. Sadly weren't how it should not be. So when you least expect it, and because of the imprecision of early 3D controls and /or wobbly camera work. And while it's not something that will haunt you throughout the entire game, when it does resurface, it does so in the most annoying and infuriating place and time. Usually where pixel-perfect precision is required, giving you no such comfort and relying on a lot of luck. Fortunately, Chameleon Twist takes roughly 2-3 hours at most to complete if you want to 100% it, and that estimate takes into account both toilet and snack breaks. So, the annoyances and bad design choices that you'll come across occasionally don't stain the overall experience too much. Oh, and there's a story to the game, but it's not a long one. It's rather silly actually, and without a satisfying conclusion when you beat the game. So I'll give it here a minute only. After following a rabbit into its hole, you are magically transformed into an alien-like chameleon mutant with a super long and sticky tongue and appear in an unknown world. So now you must use your newfound skills and powers to find your way back home. Hero of the Golden Talisman may be the game that you and I will disagree on. Yes, you. Well, if you've played it, that is. Cause the general consensus of the game populace about it, at the time at least, was that it was average at best. And to me, it was one of the best C64 games that I've ever played. I did however played it numerous years after it originally released for a variety of reasons, and only one of them being my age. They are all irrelevant today though. So let me start by stating that I loved Hero of the Golden Talisman as a kid. And yet, it's one of those games that I've managed to forget about, and it hasn't even crossed my mind for decades until I had to cover it for one of my 10 years of C64 videos. Then, it all instantly came back to me, and all the fun I had playing it, and how unforgiving it was to all my failures. And believe you me, I was not a much better gamer then than I am now, so I never actually completed it. It didn't stop me from trying, but it's just not one I can say that I've aced. Either way, Hero of the Golden Talisman is one of the earliest entries in the so-called Metroidvania subgenre of action platformers, even if it preceded both Metroid and Castlevania by a whole year. What does being a Metroidvania mean though? That it was built out of hundreds of single-screen action-packed locations arranged in a labyrinth-like maze, and that you will have a lot of fun getting lost in it. Like, literally lost. Anyway, so you'll be running, jumping, climbing and even swimming, all the while spreading bullet to the temple-delivered death and destruction to an alarming number of potentially innocent inhabitants of the maze. Which is a bit odd, as if you take a look at the gamebox cover, it clearly shows our hero knocking the enemies out with a solid conk to their noggin. It makes much more sense when you're actually playing the game, as many of the enemies seem to be animated objects rather than real and live beings. It's an 8-bit game design and logic though, so I can't really fault the game for being a victim of its time. Anyway, you can carry up to 5 items at once, and this can be colored keys, ropes, candles to light dark areas, flags that improve your weapon, or any number of other objects useful to our protagonist in one way or another, or required for puzzling. There are quite a few of those, but fortunately none of them is really useless, so even if you're carrying something for a while and don't know what it's for, it will eventually come in handy anyway. If you survive long enough, that is. Hero of the Golden Talisman's story tells a tale of a city that was protected from any evil for decades by a magical artifact known as the Golden Talisman. Now, how it protected the city is not explained anywhere. Perhaps it encompassed it in an impenetrable force field, maybe it spawned strong and undefeated armies when necessary, or released a particularly nasty smell that the evil just couldn't bear to take. It's impossible to tell today, but what isn't is how the game starts. The talisman is gone, split by a mad wizard into 5 pieces and then scattered around the deadly labyrinth filled with bloodthirsty monsters, floating mouths, dumbbell weights, and other odd shit you'd not expect to find in the game. And all of that random stuff is out to get you. So you must now travel the 512 screen strong stronghold overflowing with death to collect the 5 pieces, find the wizard's hidden lair, and explain to him, by means of an accurately aimed headshot, why he's long overdue for an eternal nap. All of that naturally to save the city. While the exploration, puzzling, and combat is fun in the Hero of the Golden Talisman, at least as much as it can be in a microcomputer 8-bit release from the early 80s, there are some things that grind my gears when playing it. For one, the collision detection is a bit fiddly and sometimes does not register properly, and it applies to both collectibles that you have to pick up to progress and enemies that you shoot at. And while with shooting, if you miss, you can just keep pulling the trigger until you finally remove that bat, piranha, dragon, or whatever's going at you from this plane of existence. But if you miss an item, and especially one grabbing which may require a particularly daring jump that takes you several screens below its location, and it does not register, it's really disheartening, as it means repeating an entire multiple screens long section just to try again. Yes, try. It's not after all guaranteed that you'll get it the second time around. And for 2, the presentation could use a bit more polish. There's no music in the game whatsoever, and the graphics could get a slight uplift as they're very simplistic. Despite all the shortcomings, however, Hero of the Golden Talisman is still a fantastic release, and I've spent a lot of time getting lost in it. Slash, swing, swish, ratatata, boom, kapow, and more can be seen, heard, and experienced in Broforce. I mean, do you enjoy a view of arms flexing in a manly full-screen high-five? Do you laugh maniacally like a little girl on a Taylor Swift concert on a thought of having to plow through hundreds if not thousands of enemies, leaving nothing but burning rubble and countless pixel-made bodies behind? On a side note, I'd enjoy the shit out of that concert myself, so you know, it may not be the best example here. Anyway, do you love the idea of having to control a character based on 1980s and 90s trash action movie iconic hero that's as flat in its backstory as his body is when made out of 2D pixels? And finally, do you subscribe to the ever-popular and never-failing in its stupidity notion of following a simpleton's mantra of bros before hoes? If you answered yes to at least one of these questions, or even if you find yourself bordering on a maybe, Broforce is a game for you. It's worth to point out here that even if you'd said no to all of these, it would still probably be a game for you, because that's how fan-freaking-tastic it is. How do I explain it to give it justice and also telegraph a seemingly endless fun that it can provide to you and up to 3 of your buddies playing together and acing its super playable design stages? Imagine Contra. Got it? Good. So it's mostly running left to right, shooting at anything that moves and beating stages one after another. Okay, and now imagine that it's Contra, only much better looking, sounding, playing, and offering over 40 unique characters to play as. All based on the respective original movies or TV series from the past, sporting their in-team weapons, special attacks, and often also unique gameplay/control mechanics. I mean, there's Rambro, Bromando, B.A. Brorakus, Brodel Walker, Broheart, Mac Brover, Brodred, Snake Brosking, Brominator, Brobocop, Indiana Bronze, Brochette, Ellen Reed Bro, Bronan the Brobarian, Broniversal Soldier, Double Bro 7, Broheart, and even Bro Lee. And all of these, are just the most obvious tip of an iceberg of fun that you can have with the game. Some of them throw explosives, others have homing or automatic weapons, flamethrower or special attacks that bring their movies to the forefront of your gaming monitor, instantly overflowing it with both feeling of nostalgia and so much fun you'd never thought you could have in a Contra-like game. And yeah, as much as it may sound cool, it's really only a tip of an iceberg, because Broforce gives you so much more. All of the levels are entirely destructible, meaning that you can literally leave just a scorched earth behind or nothing at all. Heck, you can even destroy the level to the point of not being able to complete it, soft-locking yourself from progress and having to replay that stage again. It also means that while the kill all enemies approach may be the most obvious way of playing the game, you can actually sneak or quote-unquote drill your way around them, never actually having to fight them. Because yeah, while at the end of every level a devil awaits you that you have to kill and escape on the chopper, you can actually kill no one and just escape on the chopper. I'm not saying that you should, I mean most of fun here comes from the senseless pixelated number of shades of red colored violence, but you can. There are also vehicles that you can enter, bosses small and huge, like half of the screen in size ones, and figuring out their patterns, how to beat them, and what to prioritize to solve least number of lives lost is a lot of fun. Like more fun than eating your favorite sandwich. You know, the BLT, hold the L and hold the T. And if you think that I'm done praising Broforce to moon and back, think again, because I've still something to say. The campaign is rather long, usually giving you a choice of few missions to pick between, each with their own unique objectives, ranging from killing everyone you come across, through escaping a rapidly collapsing behind you stage, to surviving the boss until it accidentally kills itself. Yeah, there's one of these too. And while the campaign is made in a way that guarantees its near-endless replayability, especially when enjoyed with up to 3 friends, there are literally thousands of additional missions and entire standalone campaigns online, waiting to be downloaded and enjoyed through Broforce's built-in user-created content library. Broforce is an endless heap of fun, and one you will not be able to stop playing. Well, unless you hate shooters and slasher life. Then yeah, you may think I'm talking bull here. All in all, despite what I'd like to be, I'm a thunderstorm. Nay, a tornado. Nay, a volcano of emotions. They are usually well hidden deep within, kept under constraints and managed as well as they can be, but from time to time, every third full moon or when I forget myself and let the beast out, the obsessive part of my undiagnosed bipolar character resurfaces and takes over. And then, try as I might, I'm unable to properly explain myself. So I may not be the best person to describe in detail all the good and bad sides of Broforce, because to me it's a perfect game. And it could only be made better if we'd keep getting new bros monthly. Maybe based on classic retro games or anime, cause that would be really cool and could provide for years of extra free content. So, take everything I said here with a grain of salt, with a speck of dandruff, or whichever the particle of your choice you'd like, and consider the footage that you saw. Give the game a try and make your own mind about it. Oh, you know what? You can actually try it for free in the form of Expandabros, which is this short, smaller, demo-like version of the game that only has a few levels and 6-ish unique to it bros, just to see if the gameplay loop is something you'd like. Keep in mind though that it's heavily simplified as compared to the full game, even if it's a decent representation of it. So, 10 out of 10, we'll play again, and you should too. Then at least for the stupid fun that it provides by the bucket. I've not done Forgotten Treasures episode ever since the tunnel got its strikes. Now that they're all gone and I'm back, I feel that I should give more time and my attention to the series. I like it because it allows me to cover more platforms than the videos that focus on just one system do, and also because I try to sneak in a single modern indie game into each episode, as these are some of the most creative and pure fun games that we get these days. So how did you find today's selection? Were the games interesting to you at all? Let me know in the comments below. And when you're there, tapping on those keys like a maniac and leaving walls of text for me to read through, why not hit those like, sub and bell icons too, for YouTube to let you know when I release something new. For me this is all, so take care of yourself, eat good food and play games.